Welcome to the Black Doctor Talk podcast. I am Dr. Christopher Holmes, host for this episode and member of the Black Doctoral Network. Today, I am joined by Dr. Jacqueline Jackson, who is a higher ed administrator. Welcome, Dr. Jackson.
Thank you, Dr. Holmes. I'm really happy to be here with you.
I am excited to have you. First, I want you to start by telling our viewers and our listeners a little bit about your background. So let's talk about where does it all begin for you?
Oh boy, it's a good story, but it's a true one. When I graduated from with my bachelor's degree from Western Illinois University, which was only 30 miles from my hometown, so I felt very safe and secure in my little home place. But that summer, I did a road trip with two friends from Illinois, like I said, that's my home state, to Denver, Colorado. And it was the middle of the summer. We had no air conditioning in the car. A whole nother story.
That means a lot. I'm from the South, so when you say no AC, I'm like, oh God.
Oh my goodness, no AC. Middle of summer, it was hot. But we made this trip to go see a friend of mine who was a brother of one of the passengers that was with me. And this friend out in Colorado was actually a residence hall director at that time, Regis University. It was either Regis College or Regis University. But anyway, that's where he lived. And one day, because I was there for over a week, I was in the kitchen and he was cooking breakfast. And he said, "What are you going to do with yourself?" And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" He says, "What are your plans?" And I said, "I have no idea." And that was the honest truth. I had no idea what I was going to do. I knew that I wanted to get my master's, but I had no idea in what field. My dreams had been dashed to go into school psychology because I didn't do so well on the GRE. So I was really, really lost. And so he took the time to talk to me about going into higher education administration. And I thought it was absolutely crazy. I had never even thought about that. But he said, "I really think that you are made for that field." Because I encourage you to, check out a few graduate programs. And so the more I listened to him, the more I said, well, maybe this is something that I should really, think about. And I did. So I went back home, and just so happened that there was, and there still is, a graduate program there at WIU, Western Illinois University. I applied. And I got in, and I did a dual program in both college student personnel and counseling, community college counseling. And so that's how I got started on this journey. So true story, journey to Colorado and a conversation in the kitchen while he's cooking bacon and eggs.
There's something to be said about a little heat and pressure, I guess.
Absolutely.
So let me ask you this.
Yes.
In that conversation with him, was there something in particular that he saw in you that he thought would be a good fit for higher ed?
If I remember correctly, because it was many years ago, he felt that I could really connect with people. He felt that my people skills were really good. And he felt that I really had something to offer in terms of working with college students. And so, like I said, this was so unfamiliar to me. I had never heard of college student personnel or higher ed administration. I had been so focused on in the field of psychology, and so it really turned my life in a different direction. And years later, I thanked my friend Dwayne. He's now since passed, but I thanked him for putting me on this pathway. So you never know who's going to influence you in your life and take in the direction that you take.
Wow, and I'm glad that you said that. Now that you've been in it for years now,
Yes.
What makes you stay in it? What makes you so passionate about it now?
To be honest with you, years ago, and I'm trying not to get choked up, but years ago, I made a promise that I would look at every student who crossed my door every student that I engaged with as a child that I needed to take care of. This is someone's child. This is someone's child. And so I felt it was my responsibility to give them all that I had in terms of making sure that they were successful. Didn't have a success story with every student I encountered, but I certainly went in with that commitment, and I still have that today. I still have that today. So that's what keeps me going. I feel an obligation to give back. I was the first in my family, my immediate family, to go to college. And I was the first in my extended family, and I have a huge family. First cousins, second cousins, third cousins, aunties, great aunties, and uncles. So I was the first one to get my doctorate. And so for me, it's reaching back and giving back and taking care of each student that I come in contact with. That's
Wow,
what keeps me going.
that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I know you didn't get choked up, so you're doing good.
But it was there.
That lump was there, right? You felt it
It
welling
was.
up.
Yeah.
You know, when you're passionate about something, it's easy to get emotional about it. I'm an educator in K-12,
Mhm.
and you think about those small kids and
Oh,
that
yeah.
I serve and I work with when I go in, and oftentimes your heart breaks for them,
Yes.
but because you see the potential that they have, that outweighs all the things they potentially have gone through in life because their futures look so much better.
Yes.
And like you
Yes.
said, you feel the obligation to foster that genius and that brilliance that's inside of them. But if we had to pivot just slightly,
Mhm.
um, everybody does not enter into the hollowed walls of academia with the same passion. And so I want to ask you, why is faculty engagement so important?
Believe it or not, yesterday I had this conversation with colleagues about faculty engagement. And here's what I said, and here's basically what we all said in terms of consensus. That is the front line for students. Faculty have the most interaction with students above anyone else. I don't care if you're the president, I don't care if you're someone like me, vice president for student success. They see those students every day. And so faculty engagement is key for persistence and retention and getting those students to the pipeline to completion to whatever their academic goal is. And so for me, that is key in terms of if an institution is committed to retention and completion, and like to think that most, if not all, colleges and universities are, you've got to fully engage your faculty. Give them the tools that they need, the training that they need. And so to work with students from a variety of diverse backgrounds and ensure to the best of your ability that those students are getting that contact and that connection both inside and of course outside the classroom. But that's why I feel that faculty engagement is so critically important. And also for the scholarship and research that they do and the involvement of students in that academic endeavor. That's a whole nother vista, if you will, for students. And so that's the other piece to this as well. So it can be very rich for students and for that faculty member.
And so we know it is important, but we also know there are challenges that go along with that. And so could you talk a little bit about some of those challenges to faculty engagement?
Well, some of the challenges could be that, so let me, for example, talk about, the fact that for a number of institutions, the majority of your faculty are part-time instructors. So they're adjuncts. I used to be an adjunct. I had a full-time job, and then I would, and then I teach on the side, a class here and a class there. And it can be really challenging in terms of, you're doing your regular work, your 9 to 5 or 10 to 7 or whatever, but then you're teaching this class, and then you've got to engage with these students. And sometimes that does not rise to the top of your list, because all you're doing is churning through, your presentations, your lectures, your uh, uh, labs, whatever it might be, reading the papers and grading the assignments. And so you're just churning through, what you're supposed to do as an instructor, but then that engagement piece can get left behind. And so, like here at Harford, the majority of our faculty and instructors are our adjuncts. And so we have made a commitment to supporting our adjunct instructors. So what I mean by that is giving them the training that they need, giving them incentives to attend, professional development conferences, or that kind of thing, asking them to serve as advisors to various student organizations. So because these instructors have another job, that's where the challenge comes, I believe, for faculty engagement. Now, of course, there's some other things that go into that, but that's the one that really comes to mind.
And I never thought about that until you just said it, because they are so pulled in personal life that their highest commitment may not be serving as an adjunct. It's just to get the job done.
Yes.
And so we've got to change that.
Yeah.
Now, there's another issue that we can also talk about, that has been, I guess, more prevalent, especially in media, over the last, say, 5 to 10 years, and that's the work of Title IX. So
my favorite subject.
Share a little bit about your work working with Title IX, and talk why that is still prevalent.
Well, first of all, please know I am not an expert in Title IX, so I just want to put that out there first. I am the Title IX coordinator here at the college. I think that for all the progress that we have made in terms of breaking the glass ceiling, having more representation of women, and other genders and diversity in our workforce. It seems like we take 3 steps back and then we end up taking 1 or 2 steps back as well. Mm-hmm. I think that is just ongoing work. I don't know if we'll ever reach, at least in my lifetime, the level where that's not that kind of discrimination and harassment does not occur in the workplace, and so it's just ongoing. And and given probably the political environment and the real pushback against diversity and inclusion, it means that we're constantly struggling in order to make sure that we have a learning and work environment that is free of harassment and discrimination. So it's just going to be ongoing. So I'm sure that's that someone could read 50 million books on this topic, but I really just believe it's the zeitgeist of our time, with this pushback and this real discomfort, if you will, of we talk about diversity and inclusion and equity, that still contributes to Title IX. And I didn't deliberately seek out to be in the Title IX world. Let me also say that. I got involved with Title IX in my last position, which was at Anne Arundel Community College. And so I got involved with investigations and training and what have you. And so that's how I got in the mix, if you will. And then when I took this job here at Harford Community College, this position has oversight of Title IX. And so I oversee a Title IX team of deputy Title IX coordinators, decision makers, and investigators. So,
well, let me ask you this question, and this stemmed from another interview that I did with someone who is a strong advocate for women. Mm-hmm. Do you feel, and this is not so much at your particular institution, but in general, do you think women have enough safe spaces in the higher ed arena? to have those conversations and to feel comfortable to share experiences, to hold people accountable who may have treated them unfairly?
Well, I'm trying not to let my own personal experiences color my response. Are there enough safe spaces? My knee-jerk reaction is it's just not enough. And I could say, well, it depends on where you work, the institution that you're at, where they're making great strides in that. Not enough institutions are doing that. So there are not enough safe spaces for women. And so that's why I think that having the outreach for women, the networking for women, that is so critical. For myself, I work very hard to create safe spaces for my women colleagues to speak with me, mentoring where that is asked for. I think that is so critical. So I don't know if I've really answered your question, but as I look back at the places that I've been and the professional conversations I've had over time, I think we have expanded that space, but there's still some reticence and hesitancy, if you will, in terms of, do I dare speak up about my experience? Am I going to experience retaliation?
Yes.
You know, am I going to lose my job? Mm-hmm. And so I still don't think we're there yet. Made progress, but not there yet.
Yeah, and I think that's, like you said, it's going to be a continuous terrain we'll have to navigate through for a long time. Now, you spoke on this already, and I kind of want to dive into this conversation as it relates to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And even as it relates to Title IX, there are a lot of things that we put on paper, but the real true change happens in implementation. Mm-hmm. So my question to you is, what should be the focus of higher ed or in higher ed regarding DEI? What should we be starting? I think sometimes we're trying to do too much at one point. We need a good starting point to really get the ball rolling, to make the impact that we say we want to make.
So let me say this. I think it's in your recruitment and hiring, and there's a reason why I'm saying that. 2 years ago, we do have a diversity and inclusion, cultural and equity committee, better known as DICE, that did a survey of our students. And by the way, we are required every year to submit a report to the state, the Maryland Higher Education Commission, on our DIE efforts and how we're moving the needle in terms of bridging achievement gaps, hiring gaps, and what have you. So I do want to put that out there. The state of Maryland does require that of its public institutions. But the student survey that the DICE committee did, there were comments that students made saying, I don't see me in the classroom.
Wow.
I don't see me in the classroom. And so I would like to think for here, and we have a new associate VP over HR, and she and I have talked about, and believe it or not, I had just had this conversation yesterday because we were talking about some personnel matters in terms of how we go about diversifying our workforce and how critical that is for our students, and then for the learning of the campus community in terms of the diverse backgrounds and lives that we represent. So for me, I would say the starting point is, you know, how are you recruiting, and who are you hiring? Are you doing well in training your search committees? You know, and moving away from, well, I just don't think they're a good fit.
Yeah.
You know, and so that is my answer to your question. And we are improving our training for the search committees. This academic year, we are starting training on microaggression, which
Mhm.
is a huge move for this college. And so HR is starting with the executive team first because they said before we roll this out to the campus community, you executive team need to get some training on microaggression. So those are the kinds of things that you need to be doing at your institutions to really start making good on the promise of creating a diverse and vibrant learning community.
Wow. Get ready to get uncomfortable.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, that's that work that causes you to be uncomfortable in so many instances. Even if something that's said that doesn't personally impact you, you can see how somebody else begins to unravel right before you, and it becomes tense.
It does. And, and I do applaud my college and I applaud the other colleges and universities that are doing this work. Last year, DICE began a book club. And he's like, oh, I wonder, how well is this going to go? Are people going to really take a step to read, White Privilege by, I'm sorry, her name is escaping me, or so you want to talk about race, which was the book that was assigned. And while we didn't have hundreds of employees that accepted that invitation, there were some who did, and I was one of those employees and was part of one of the many discussion groups on that. And people were uncomfortable, but they wanted to be uncomfortable, and they welcomed it. And there were some tears that were shed. So, for example, one of my colleagues had no idea about the history of redlining in neighborhoods and in real estate. And and so it was interesting in terms of how they began to understand the experiences of others who had different lives.
Yeah,
So you begin with your workforce
yeah.
to start making that change.
Well, I agree. So let's keep going. Let's talk about a little bit more about you.
Okay.
Um, so I want to know who has had a tremendous impact on you in your career.
Where do I begin? Um, I would say there were, besides my friend Dwayne, who I mentioned earlier, there were two other people. Uh, One actually was a white woman, and she passed away last year. I had just started my second job in higher education, and was this had been selected as the assistant dean of students. So off I go, and I was still very green behind the ears. And she took me under her wing and she was mentoring me and really began building up my skill base in student affairs. And so what I mean by that is I want you, Jackie, to take over and build our sexual assault prevention education program. I want you, Jackie, to get into leadership development through our student activities office. So those are the kind of things that she assigned to me. She would talk to me. We got along very well, but more so, she was a friend to me. And I really appreciated that. And we never lost contact with each other until she tragically passed away last year. And then the other individual, who's African American man, wonderful, wonderful person, tough boss, tough, tough to work for. But boy, did I learn from him. I mean, when he called me and said, "I want you to be on my team." I've been asked to head up creating a new community college in DC, and so I want you on my team. And I was floored. I had met him not by design. I was teaching I was a visiting assistant professor at George Washington University. It was a 2-year gig. And so when I started my second year, I said, hey, I better start looking around and start doing some networking because I'm a job. And so uh, someone gave me a name of someone who was at his institution at that time. He was with Northern Virginia Community College. So I called that individual, and she was working for him. And we connected right away, this individual. And so I was asked to work on a couple of their small grants that they had. And I said, not a problem, would love to do it. And so I met him. And he was the provost at the time. And we started having conversations just about the work of helping students be successful.
Mhm.
And so when I got that call from him to join his team, it took me 3 weeks to make up my mind. And my husband said, "Are you crazy?" He goes, you get, "What's taking you so long?" I said, "I don't know. Why is he calling me?" I'm like, I've never been a department chair, or I'm just teaching right now. But I took a jump. I took a leap. And like my prior boss from years ago, Pat, Jonathan took me under his wing. And I grew so much under his leadership. And there were times when, I said, "Ooh, is he still going to keep me?"
Mhm.
And then other times where it was exhilarating. It was exhausting work to stand up a new community college. And when I did stumble, he would pick up the phone, call me in my office and go, "Dr. Jackson." And that's when I knew that, I was like, okay, what did I do now, Jonathan? And so we had that camaraderie, but he had high standards.
Mm.
And that really helped shape me to the professional that I am today. So those two individuals from very different backgrounds, but boy, did they give of themselves to help me become the professional that I am today. So those are the two. And of course, my mother and my father.
Yeah.
Always, always. So when my mother, if I can just say this, when she sends me things in the mail, she always writes Dr. Jacqueline Jackson. And I'm like, "Mom, you don't know you earned that degree. You are Dr. Jackson." So
And she's so proud to write that on that package, I'm sure.
she is. She is. And I know that people out in the audience can really relate to that.
Oh, yeah, I can. I'll be a witness to that. Well, tell me this. So you've been doing this for a while now. What is one thing you wish you would have known earlier on in your career?
Ooh, that's a very good question. I wish I had known the influence that the political environment has, the influence that boards have and how they're selected, the influence of state laws and federal laws that really shape this work. And so, yes, I went through my graduate program and I went through my doctoral program, but I wish I had known more about how do those forces come to play
Yeah.
and impact the lives of students. So that's what I wish that I had known more about. So I had a lot of catching up to do over the years.
So let me ask you this. This is another question. I'll be interested to see how you answer this based on the things you've told me so far. If there's somebody watching and they're looking at your life and looking at your career and they're saying, "God, I really want to do what she's doing," what advice would you give them in order to enter into higher ed administration?
Sure. So what I would recommend is that, let's say you're still in your bachelor's program, or even master's program. I would advise that you find a way to become a volunteer with one of the programs, student affairs. So let me give you an example. If there's a multicultural student center that reports in student affairs, I would see about getting connected to that. And this is for people who haven't really thought about higher ed administration. I would look at leadership programs. If you're let's say a president of a student organization, even if it's a graduate student organization, I would look at leadership programs that are designed for students and get connected that way, because you can do a wonderful job in networking with those who are already in the field.
Yeah.
So it's really about the networking that's going to open your eyes in terms of, is this something that I really want to do? And then I would find a mentor who can help you with that and begin connecting you with others and helping you to open other doors. So remember my Colorado story. I didn't have a clue, didn't know what I wanted to do. And I just took that one person who talked to me and set me on my way. And I wish that when I was an undergrad that I had done some of those things. I was too busy partying. I did do good in my classes, but I was too busy partying and never took advantage in terms of those leadership opportunities with student organizations, getting better connected to faculty whose classes I enjoyed.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't do that. I didn't take the initiative. So if you're one of those people who wants to really check into higher education, I would encourage you to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really about people connection.
Yeah.
If you want to be in this field, and then taking it from there in terms of getting the graduate training and internships and all those wonderful things.
Awesome. Awesome. So in the next 5 to 10 years, where do you see yourself?
Well, I flip-flop. I'm gonna be honest with you. I do flip-flop. On the one hand, I say, well, do I want to go for college presidency? Because for 11 months, I was the interim president here at the college. We had a leadership change, and then the pandemic hit all at the same time. And so in February of last year, I served as the interim president and really learned a lot through that experience. And I've had other college presidents here in the state at the time that I was serving as interim. They said, well, you are ready. You are ready to be a president. And so, and one even said, this position that's available right now is someplace in New Jersey. I'm more than happy to, be a reference for you. And so, I thought about it. So I don't know. So it's either going to be maybe a presidency, or it's going to be retirement. And I'm going to Maui and write a book.
Well, the second option sounds really enticing. Let me say that.
Yes. And Maui is one of my favorite places in the world. I've been there a few times. And my husband said that, I want to stay here in Maryland. So, but yes, so there might be one more stage to my journey in higher ed in terms of, looking at a college presidency. Let me be clear, in case my boss looks at this, I am not looking for a job.
Well, I said 5 to 10, so that's a safe answer, right?
There you go. Yes. So.
Well, let me say this: when I asked you the question, presidency came to my mind. Mm-hmm. And if I had to thread together what you shared with me today, is that life's destinations happens in 2 phases. It happens first with the drive, like you did to Colorado. And then once you get there, it's not about just standing there. You've got to make the leap.
Yes.
And you make the leap because somebody says there's something I see in you that it's safe to jump.
Yes.
And so even as president, you just said, the guy said, I'm willing to give you the reference because you're ready. So he's already saying it. He sees it in you. Yes. But when you're comfortable, you've got to make the leap.
I do. It's going to drive, my spouse crazy. I say to him one more time, we got to move.
I know.
But, that just brings to mind, and I want, the listeners of this podcast to pay attention to this as well. And not just because it's my story, but someone is going to tell you that here's what I see in you, whatever your name is. Because when I first started out in my career, this is, again, no lie, my very first year, again, very green behind the ears. And the vice president for student affairs at that time, we were walking across campus and he stopped and he said to me, Jackie, he says, I really see where you could be a college president. And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. I'm just starting. he said, no, no. He said, I really see that in you. And so he said, I don't want you to forget that. And there have been times that I have remembered him saying that to me. So folks, when somebody says to you, here's what I see in you, here's the potential that I see in you, please pay attention to that. Please pay attention.
Yeah.
Because that's a larger message that's coming through that's just, for you.
Yeah, they were just a vessel, but it's coming from the atmosphere to you.
Yes.
Yeah, I believe that. I definitely believe that. So
Yeah.
before we get too caught up in talking about other stuff,
Yeah.
let me ask you this last question. How has your affiliation with the Black Doctoral Network enhanced your career?
Well, a friend of mine was the one who brought it to my attention, and she sent me the link and said, check this out. And so I went in and I looked around, and I said, well, is this really for someone like me? Because I said, I'm an old head and I've been here for a while. I've been around for a while. But I went ahead and joined, and I actually renewed my membership not too long ago, just a couple of weeks or so ago. What it is for me is, again, it's that connection. And I love seeing what our younger folk are doing, or those who have not been in the field that long, or who just got their doctorate, or they're still working on their doctorate. Yeah. I remember that journey. So I love what you're doing. I love these podcasts. I love the, papers and poster sessions that you've been doing. This is a vibrancy that we need as African Americans and those of us in the diaspora who have gotten our doctorate or working on our doctorate. I think that is just wonderful. So for me, it's kind of absorbing the energy and the work that others are doing. So that's what it means for me in my career.
Oh man, yeah. Well, thank you for being a part of the Black Doctoral Network, and thank you again for joining us today on the Black Doctor Talk podcast. It has been a pleasure. And let me just say to you, thank you so much for what you offer to our students and our next change makers from your head. But yeah, thank you more for what you offer from your heart, because it truly makes a difference. Dr. Jackson, will you please leave our viewers and listeners with a final thought, and also tell them where they can go to learn more about the work that you are doing?
So I thank you for that, to allow me a minute or so just to give some closing remarks. I wanted to read just a short paragraph from a little spiritual booklet that I have, and it really touched me, and I hope that it touches others as well. So here is what it says. More than you know, you are a power for good. More than you know, you help and bless and inspire others. More than you know, you bring comfort and strength and peace to the hearts of those about you. More than you know, you are an unconscious influence in the lives of those about you. More than you know, you are important to others. So my thing with that is, what you do matters. The work that you do matters. And whether you know it or not, you are influencing someone else to keep on keeping on. Yeah. So in terms of how to learn more about what I'm doing, I do not have a professional page or website, but certainly I invite you to visit the college website, www.harford.edu. And there you can find all the things that we're doing here in student success and enrollment management and student development, and making a difference in the lives of our students. And the last thing I want to say is I'm also was asked to be a mentor for a brand new African American Leadership Institute. So more to come on that, but I'm so excited. I was selected to be a mentor and to two mentees and being a presenter. So more to come on that, but thank you for having me.
Awesome. This has been a pleasure. Thank you guys for watching and for listening. Please be sure to stay connected to the Black Doctoral Network and connect with us on all of our social media channels as well. Thank you for joining us today for the Black Doctor Talk podcast. We hope you will join us again next time. But for now, be sure to like, share, subscribe, and tell a friend. And remember, what you're doing matters more than you know. Have a good one.